Hi, channel creator of Hard Bases to give you the setup here. All the diesel community is running around pissing their pants that the EPA will be relaxing or eliminating the delete of and tuning of emission removal regulations. I want to inform you this is not the case, nor will this ever happen. This EPA relaxation will be sending this to the states for them to make these decisions, and if you're in a democratic state, expect this regulation to get very harsh, like impounding and destroying your truck, jail time, and steep fines for shops. This article will show and explain what's to come. So just a couple days ago in New York, there were officers randomly targeting diesel trucks, and they were just pulling them over. They were inspecting their emissions equipment, making sure that the trucks were not deleted, and if they were, they would find them. This was kind of a campaign that they were running, sort of a sting operation in various counties in the state. If you don't live in the state of New York and you're watching this might apply to you, because if it's happening there, it can happen anywhere, so that's why I'm covering this story. It's kind of interesting. I know just a couple months ago, Lee Zeldin made that big speech about deregulating a bunch of regulations within the EPA. But this has nothing to do with the EPA. If you don't know what that term deleted means, essentially, they just remove their emissions equipment, their diesel particulate filter, their EGR system, their catalytic converter, anything that involves emissions on their diesel engines, as well as tuning. So that's what they did. They inspected these vehicles, and if they didn't comply with New York's emission standards, they were being busted. And look, I'm sure this happens all the time, but it was sort of a sting operation or a campaign, if you will. As a matter of fact, they're setting up numerous checkpoints within several counties of the state. So I'm going to cover that story in today's video, but the very least that you can do is hit the like button, because it's going to push this information, this factual information, into the algorithm so everybody knows what's going on. So hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you enjoy the content. Also, hit the notification bell. Alright, so New York officers uncover major violations during dirty diesel crackdown. And this was just published May 9th, 2025. I'm gonna leave a news article. It's the only news article that I can find online that gives you this kind of information, but a multi-county crackdown on diesel trucks just led to dozens of tickets. Here's what the New York officials found during Earth Week enforcement. During Earth Week, the New York State DEC conducted patrols focused on heavy-duty vehicles. Officers were looking to ensure compliance with New York's air quality regulations and emission standards. In Hudson Valley, officers focused on tampering of diesel exhaust systems, commonly known as deleting, when sections of the federally required emission systems on a HDDV or heavy-duty diesel vehicle are intentionally removed, bypassed, or reprogrammed, causing high levels of diesel particulate to escape unlawfully through exhaust emissions. In Orange, Rockland, and Sullivan counties, 20 vehicles were pulled over, resulting in 13 tickets. Tickets included charges for non-functioning emissions control apparatus and operating a vehicle without proper emissions control devices. In the DEC's Region 8, the DEC partnered with inspectors from the DOT Motor Carrier Safety Unit to inspect 50 vehicles at a DOT inspection site. I know a lot of people are saying that it's legal to delete your diesel truck now in 2025. That's false. That is completely false. You see what's going on right now in this world. The first thing that hit my mind was, Lee Zeldin. I know I talked about this a couple of months ago. Huge news, actually. It was in March 14th. He's the chief administrator of the EPA, and he talked about deregulating 38 regulations from the EPA, which involved emissions as well. Everybody celebrated. They were all excited about it. But he was basically saying that he's going to give the power back to the states. He wants to give the power back to the states for them to make their own emissions standards, their own emissions laws. That makes perfect sense. The quality of air in rural Michigan, where I live, isn't the same as New York or New York City in the big city. I understand that they're going to have their own specific requirements, and they have to enforce that. I get that. I gotta be honest, the very first thought that hit my mind, man, I am so glad that I don't live in the state of New York. I say that about California too. And look, no offense to you if you live in that state. I'm talking about the emission standards. I'm not talking about the state as a whole. But I also have a few questions. If you get pulled over and you get ticketed, what does that mean? What if you don't fix your vehicle? Going back to that short news article, they were talking about the people that were ticketed. They said that 20 vehicles were pulled over, resulting in 13 tickets. So what did they get ticketed for? So tickets included charges for non-functioning emissions control apparatus and operating a vehicle without a proper emissions control device. So what is that? 2 charges? What does that mean for them? So if they don't fix it, but what happens after that? I'm assuming that you can't register your vehicle anymore in that state. And also the other question that hit me was, what if my vehicle was deleted? What if I didn't have emissions on my truck, and I was just driving through the state because I'm not a resident of New York, and I have out-of-state tags, and I just drove through that state? Can I be fined for not having emissions on my vehicle? Let me know in the comments if that's true or not. I don't know. I have no clue. I hear it all the time that DOT, or Department of Transportation, does random inspections in other states like Colorado, maybe Illinois, specifically the blue states. But man, this information is a huge heads up, because for some people that think that it's legal now to delete their diesel trucks, man, do they have another thing coming? They're going to have a huge surprise when they get pulled over and get smacked with a fine. I remember a couple years ago I covered a story in, I think it was New Jersey, where there was a guy that listed his Dodge Cummins, deleted Cummins, on Facebook Marketplace. And within that state, they have their own EPA system. It's not the EPA, but they have their own emissions agency, if you will. They found that post on Facebook and they wanted to make an example out of this guy. They located this person, they issued him a letter, and they said that if you do not return your vehicle back to stock, that they would revoke the VIN number on the vehicle, or the vehicle would have to be completely destroyed. I mean, I think you guys can see some of the overreach. I understand that we want clean air. We want to breathe clean air. I get that. I know that's so important. I understand that rolling coal and obstructing people's view is illegal. I get that, and that's completely wrong, and it makes people in this community look terrible. But the fact that you would revoke a VIN number, that you would destroy this vehicle if they don't return it back to stock, that's ridiculous. Anyways, I'm going off topic, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and get back to this. So I did some digging. Again, I don't live in the state of New York, so I'm not sure what your guys' diesel inspections look like annually, because obviously you have them. And if you don't know, this is public knowledge. I went on the dmv.ni.gov, and it talks about inspections, diesel inspection, emissions testings, about it, and what counties you have to do it within the state. Stumbled across this right here, roadside diesel emissions inspections. Any diesel-powered vehicle registered anywhere in New York State with a maximum gross weight, or MGW, as indicated on the vehicle's registration certificate, greater than 8,500 pounds can be required to pass a random roadside diesel emissions inspection. The New York State Police, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and the New York State Department of Transportation conducted these inspections. If a vehicle fails the inspection, the driver can receive a summons and a fine of $700 for the first offense and $1,300 for the second or subsequent offense. The driver can reduce the fine if the vehicle is repaired and passes a re-inspection at a DMV licensed facility within 30 days of the violation. And if you think about it, you have 30 days to put this thing back to stock. Do you realize how expensive it is to put it back to stock? I guess the best thing you guys can do in the state of New York is to leave everything stock. Don't do anything to your diesel vehicle. I personally have been working on these diesel trucks for many years, and I know the level of work that it's going to take to put all the emissions back on. It's insane. I would say that if they're going to be targeting random vehicles on the highway, they should go after the bigger fish. Things that actually matter, like people that dump raw sewage into the oceans or follow suit with Florida. I think Florida did a great job. I know DeSantis, if I'm not mistaken, has already pushed to either ban or completely get away from chemtrails being dumped into the air by airplanes and poisoning Americans. I would say that that's a huge step in the right direction to improve air quality. Things like that, things that actually are important. Not go after the random truck driver that removed his DPF and tuned his vehicle so it can run better and run cleaner and get better MPGs, and not block up and build up soot within the engine and choke the life out of it. Because obviously diesel trucks nowadays, diesel engines are not lasting 1,000,000 miles anymore. You might get lucky and get 250,000, maybe 300,000 miles on an engine. I'm gonna stop. All right, let's go ahead and get to the good news. This is kind of interesting. May 1st, 2025, so just last week, the U.S. House passes Congressional Review Act resolutions to block California air emissions rules. It's basically an attempt to block implementations of California's vehicle emissions mandates, including the Advanced Clean Trucks Regulation and the Advanced Clean Cars 2 Regulation. But that's a huge deal right now, because during the Biden administration, they were pushing mandates to basically stop the sale of used vehicles. And I'm talking about used gasoline vehicles and used diesel vehicles, which would completely affect the economy in the state of California. They were pushing mandates to eventually get to a certain year where you have to buy an EV. You have to buy an electric vehicle. You don't have a choice. That's the only way that you can drive on the road. And also in this act, they're trying to push the advanced clean truck regulation, which essentially means that you can no longer have a trucking company that uses diesel anymore. It has to be electric. It has to be EV. Everything across the board has to be EV, which would essentially crush the small businesses, the small trucking companies, which would mean that it would bring the economy to its knees. You see, the problem here is the fact that California is, believe it or not, the flagship of emission standards. And a lot of other states have already adopted their emission standards in their states. This state literally has no right to force their unrealistic standards on any other state. As a matter of fact, if you didn't know, the previous administration is being investigated. The previous EPA administration is being investigated for targeting diesel shops, for bullying diesel shops for not fitting into their agenda. They were being targeted. They were being fined millions of dollars, and they're currently under investigation right now. So they're cleaning house. There's actually talks about when this investigation is over that diesel shops, diesel tuners will receive a restitution for all the money that they were fined. But that's pretty cool information. As of May 6th, the U.S. House passes Congressional Review Act resolution to block California air emissions rules. As weird as this sounds, I'm pretty excited to see where the EPA is going. As far as putting this in the hands of the other states, you guys see where this is going right now. So be careful. That's all I'm saying. This is a huge heads up to some of you guys. Also, let us know in the comments, have they lessened the emission standards in your area, in your state, in your county, in your city, in your town? Let us know. Have they completely got rid of emissions checks to register your vehicle annually? I would like to know that as well. So drop a comment down. Let us know where you're from and what's going on in your state. Right now, on this great American Hard Basis news and information channel, there is a creator working hard to get your view, even a simple click for a like, loosing hope, begging for your comment, so I know I have touched your life in any way. Here on Hard Basis, we search for the best news and information items you may never see anywhere else. To help you, the viewer, get a laugh or keep informed, even make you think. But I can't reach more folks just like you without your support, so please consider joining for a limited time. Your subscription is free and free for life. You will sleep well every night knowing you reached out and clicked. You will barely be able to sleep waiting for our next video, so won't you today help and subscribe, like and share? Help me help you. It won't disappoint, and thank you in advance.